Welcome back to Change Ed,
Changed.
your favorite podcast for educators by educators. We are the official podcast of Pete and C. We are here at the STEM Summits with a amazing crew of guests. We're excited for our show today. I am Andrew Kuhn, education consultant for Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, and here with me,
Trace Semichek, also at the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit and an educational consultant.
And Tony Marabito, Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit, Staff Development Facilitator.
Together we are the Three Stooges, and we are excited to be your co-hosts for this podcast. We actually also have, first time in Change Ed history, 3 guests all at one time. All of our guests are from the Northwest Tri-County Intermediate Unit, #5.
You got it.
Okay, thank you. Stressful. So here with us we have Joy Shaffer.
Hello.
We also have Rebecca Schauffele
Yes, indeed. Welcome.
and Christina Sanders.
Yes, hello.
Hello, welcome all. You are one of our presenters for the breakout sessions, and your session was called Beg, Borrow, and Steal This Notebook. But the way steal was written, it looks like it was a play on words, and that we're going to be talking about steals. Is that the case?
Absolutely. Beg, borrow, and steals. This notebook didn't quite sound right, so we went with the steal.
So we dropped the S, but it's still there. It's just a silent S, or is it an invisible S?
It's the ELNS from Environmental Literacy and Sustainability, so we couldn't. It's there. It's
Okay.
implied.
It's almost like a dash, right? Like dash, sustainability is still there.
Yes.
So what inspired you to come up with this idea? I'm seeing the 3 dimensions of learning in here, steals, standards, hands-on. There's a lot of good stuff that you were talking about, but what was the motivation behind offering this session and talking about this here and now?
So there's been a big shift with the new STEEL standards, and not only is the instructional model change and how we're teaching changing in the classroom, but we're thinking about the tool that we use, or maybe have used, maybe it hasn't been used. I guess it varies, but that needs to change as well. So think back to when you were in school. What did you do in your science notebook, in your science classroom? What did you put in there? Like way back when you were a student. I'm sure it was way back.
I remember copy coloring, cutting it out, and putting it together like a diagram of a flower, perhaps, or biomes. Yeah, something like that.
What else?
Wow, I put in notes.
Andrew has to try to remember back 40 years.
Yeah, we didn't have paper or pencil then, but I was working off a rock, but I put in notes.
Remember those vocabulary exercises? Maybe we're flipping to the back of the
Yeah, there was a
book.
lot of like whatever my teacher told me to write down.
Right.
Yeah.
There was not a whole lot of thought that went into it. It was just copy this into your notebook and we'll reference it later.
Yeah, it's almost like the information. We were the transcribers of the information. It transitioned through us, right? Like we didn't actually retain it. It kind of flowed through us.
Exactly. So we're trying to bring that to life. And we are changing our instructional practices, but we also need to change the tools that we're using with our students. And using notebooking intentionally in the science classroom is really going to help those students. The research is there showing that when you're using visual note taking, what student doesn't love to doodle? I was a doodler, doodling all over the page, but it really can help with improving their memory of the content and their conceptual understanding of what's going on with the phenomena.
So do you think this would work across all grade levels? Is this something that you can see at the kindergarten level all the way up to 12th grade?
Yes, but keep in mind, it's going to look different in every single class. Way more structure with the littles, probably more training up front for everybody. But once you get it established, it's going to be a tool. They're going to use it all the time. Their notebooks should always be with them. It's going to look all beat up and tattered. It's probably going to look different from kiddo to kiddo, but I think it can be used across the board and should be.
You know, one thing that's sticking out to me is sense making. And I see here, now are you using the notebook as a way of sense making, or is it supporting the sense making that's already happened in the classroom?
I would say it's a little bit of both. So we want students to be able to make sense of their learning from that phenomena. So they're using their notebooks to write down their observations or what they notice and wonder about something. They can also use it as like a journal or things that they're observing from out in nature. Like if they're going on a nature walk, they can write down observations that they see, even do like little doodlings or like leaf prints or something to kind of keep track of what they're looking at. So they can be used in many different ways.
Yeah, the thing that came to mind when you were talking about it was almost like a diary, right? Like I'm writing out my thoughts. I'm
Yeah.
processing through that sense making, right? Like I'm using this as a tool to help me make sense. It helps me to understand it when I write it out. Like I really have to think through it in a different way. Even than talking through it, when I put it to words, it makes it real in a different way, or helps me to say, no, that's actually not it. That doesn't make sense. So you're committing to it when you write it down.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've noticed too, through the research that we've done with some of this work with notebooking, that when students are writing things down, they're getting that movement, that kinesthetic movement with their learning. So they're able to process it and remember it more than rather than just memorizing or looking at something different, or even like a digital notebook. Sometimes that transition might not be as beneficial to the students if they're not actually writing something down or coloring or doodling or things like that.
One of the things that I'm hearing through this conversation is that there is a way for us to bridge the gap between what were older tools that we used to use and this new mindset. And we're not saying don't use notebooks. We're saying there's a different way to use notebooks that would be more engaging, that would be pulling in the learner to process learning at the same time versus I'll give you all the knowledge, you write it down, and then you study that and get ready for the exam. Instead, this is a process or a journey that you can go on.
I think just kind of go back off that, Andrew. A large piece of our shift in our science classroom is about helping our students make their thinking visible and being able to see what our students are thinking, have them see what they're thinking, their peers as well. And having that sketchnoting going on in those notebooks allows that to happen in a safe space. And it can be just for the student and the teacher. It can be shared within the classroom, and it could be used to start that consensus model that's happening in our new science classroom. It really is that springboard to so many other pieces that is happening in this shift in the classroom.
So I like that you mentioned the thinking becomes visible. It's such an easy way for teachers to course correct now that they see what the student has like down on paper. I'm super excited to use this. I want to do this at our summer camps and start with the little ones, even if it's just drawings. And I know, like you mentioned, a lot of coaching, but I love to see after a week of camp what they took away.
If I was a teacher and I wanted to get started with this, how would I go about getting started? Because it seems like it could be potentially overwhelming to give up some of that freedom. So how would I go ahead and get started with starting this kind of notebooking?
My favorite entry point for notebooking in a science classroom specifically would be a notice and wonder chart, or what I like, take it a little step further, a see, think, wonder chart. So you're setting it up, just a basic T chart. What do you see? We're going to experience a phenomena. So they're getting this ready. You have it ready. We're going to look at this phenomena. Maybe it's a demonstration. Maybe we're watching a video and we're going to see some type of phenomena. They're jotting down either words, maybe it's pictures. What do they see happening? What do they think is going on with that phenomena? And then what questions are popping into their head? What are they wondering about it? So that way, not only are you getting an idea of what they're thinking, it's also a great time to catch any misconceptions or even some really rich background that they might be bringing to the classroom. So it's wonderful, not only for the students, but it's great for the teachers as well.
Have you seen notebooking help with collaboration? Are students able to verbalize what they're writing down to when they're writing down their findings or writing down whatever they might be wondering or seeing or thinking?
Yeah, I think one of the neatest experiences that we like to talk about is when the students are sharing with a partner, maybe an elbow partner. They're sharing their model of what they think is going on with the phenomena. They're explaining it to each other. But then, rather than them going and explaining their own, Christina's explaining mine, and I have to explain hers. So it adds that concept of being a good listener, and making sure that I'm ready to explain what she was thinking. And maybe we have some commonalities and we're recognizing that, or maybe she had something that was awesome and maybe I begged, borrowed, or stole.
And did you hear good listener? Did you hear that?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
That's exactly what I thought.
Well, I think also to go off your question though, on having teachers putting this into their classrooms, it is overwhelming. And that was kind of a resounding message at the end of our session. One of the biggest takeaways from our session was when we had them participating in some sketchnoting. We started with a phenomenon.
Yeah, wait, tell me about that.
Our watershed is the Lake Erie watershed.
Okay.
So a phenomena that happens on Lake Erie is something called a seiche. We didn't explain that at first. We showed a video, and it's a video from last winter, I believe, of a huge sheet of ice just busting over a break wall. It's called an ice tsunami.
Very cool.
And we live on Lake Erie. So one end you've got Ohio, Cleveland area, and on the other end is Buffalo. So that's where this video is from. All this ice is just coming through. What do you notice? What do you wonder? What do you think is happening? And then we took them into an exploration activity where we gave them an opportunity to read through a one-pager about a SAISH from the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
That was impressive.
They experienced the phenomena, they got to read more, and then they did sketchnoting in their notebook using all the different techniques. So when you're sketchnoting, you have some different elements in there. Color is one of them. Got to have color. It makes it more fun, makes it pop. Then you've got some text. And we're not just talking like note. And I brought my sketch note. So you'll see like a little example of it here. Certain words might be bolded out in a way that's meaningful to you. I like to make mine fancy and swirly in certain areas. But then you've also got elements like arrows and diagramming. So you have that cognitive piece there where I'm linking these together and making sense of it for me.
Sure.
So they were writing down what's going on with a SAISH. And I asked, has anybody in this room, does anybody know what a SAISH is?
Crickets.
And I was like, oh, cool. So it's essentially, because I know we don't have access to it here, you've got a giant lake and then you got a huge windstorm happening and it's blowing all the water from one end of the lake to the other. So think about like being in a bathtub when you were a kid and sloshing back and forth and making the waves.
That's very
That's
cool.
a SAISH.
By wind.
It's a sensational phenomenon.
Particular piece that you brought up was you showed something that these kids can actually relate to. That's a real life situation that they see on a daily basis. That would have meant nothing to me just because down here we don't get to see that. So I love the explanation. I love that you chose something that your students actually can buy into. So
Yeah.
I actually really appreciated that you showed me your sketch note because in my head I was thinking, and I've seen sketch notes before where it's a lot of pictures,
It can be.
and I don't feel like I'm an artist, and I would be focused more on what I'm drawing and how my face or whatever looks than what I'm actually writing. So I appreciated that you said and showed us that it was different fonts in the way that you wrote and different arrows and things like that, because I think that's important for people to kind of understand that it's more than just drawing pictures and making connections through the pictures. So thank you.
And I think Joy really hit the nail on the head. She said it can be. So if you are a visual person and you do need all those doodles, and maybe you're a student that really, really struggles with getting those words down on the paper, something with a bunch of pictures might be more meaningful for them. And it leads back to the sense making. You want them to get there and you want them to be able to make their thinking visible. And there might not be a lot of words associated, and that's okay. We're going to meet them where they're at.
It was phenomenal phenomena that we went through with them. So thank you for bringing that up. It can be time consuming. However, we presented the phenomenon, quick little video clip. We had an article and gave them 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
And they were then sharing their sketchnoting into a Padlet with us, and they were able to do that. And now we're all adult learners. We've been in the learning game for a while, so maybe it was a little bit faster than it would be for students. However, it wasn't a time-consuming process. They picked it up really quickly. So I really do believe that if we are introducing this early on in the school year with our kiddos, giving them the boundaries, allowing additional time within the day if they need more time to express their thoughts or expand on their thinking. I'm sure there's those 10 minutes in the day where they could be provided that at the end of the day before they leave or something like that. Doesn't have to be this extra big to do. It's just woven into our science classroom.
You know, what I find really interesting and fascinating about this is that we would not have been having, or we did not have these types of conversations with our previous standards. So it's always important to remember that standards are standards. That's something that we're looking towards, and it's a point of focus for us. But really, with these standards also came instructional practices. So I love that you were also modeling phenomenon in that, right? You're not saying this is not exclusive, this is not just something you do, and here's how we do it and what it looks like. But I want to offer you a first time on Change Ed Nation that, you know, we always have a final thought, and my team voted that I should always be the one to give the final thought. But
There was no vote.
what
No one was there when they voted.
it was a consensus, yeah, and I voted.
Only you and I.
Yeah. No one disagreed. But I want to offer you all an opportunity to kind of have a final thought. Since we have this many guests, because the popularity of the show, we have to have more and more guests and keep increasing it. I want to give you that opportunity for that thought. And then again, because of the vote, I'll close it out. But we're going to start with Rebecca.
My final thought is just give it a try. You don't have to be an artist. The student doesn't have to be an artist. Heck, if you're a teacher that's not comfortable drawing, pull a student on up who loves to draw. They would love it if you were coming up with a class consensus model of what you think, what you know is going on with a phenomena. Just start there, work with the skills of your students, give it a shot. It's pretty fun.
Thank you, Rebecca. Popcorn, Christina.
Hello. So I think my final thought is you don't necessarily have to do this just for science. You can do this with other things as well. We had talked to somebody from our session that thought that they were really going to be able to implement this in their engineering classroom. The engineering design process is a big part of the steels now. Not that it wasn't before, but there's a big emphasis on that technology and engineering side. So I think being able to incorporate this with other subjects as well and tying this all together, I think is also a really big thing too.
I can tell that you're a fan of the show from the way that you just said you can do this anywhere. And that's the point of the show, right? It's not just for steels, it's all over. Joy, I have stalled as long as I can, so it's now your turn.
My final thought. I think that our teachers are overwhelmed right now.
Yeah.
And sketchnoting, though we are bringing it to Pete and C right now, it's not a new practice. So this is just bringing it back to the surface and reminding our teachers that this can be that safe space for some students. We need to be providing them an opportunity to have that safe space. And it might be in conversation for one student, but that other student might need that notebook. And I think the more times we offer that, the more our students are going to be willing to share. But I do have one final question for you guys.
I think we're out of time. No time for questions.
You guys have been taking notes throughout our session. So my question for you is, are you sketchnoting?
Caught me. Yep. I want to try these things out with the kids that I get in front of. So I appreciate all your insight into it.
I wasn't sure how to spell seiche, so I just drew one because I didn't know. Yeah, from the explanation. Yeah.
I was writing the way I normally do, but I guess you could call it sketchnoting. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. But I do have different size fonts and darker things and lines. Awesome. That's the other thing too, I think is really interesting, is that people might be doing it not even realizing they're doing it, right? Like we've all created systems to track what we're supposed to remember and things like that. So that's super easy way to get teachers kind of involved. You're probably already doing it.
So the word that came to mind while you were talking about this was engagement, right? It's all about the engagement, which is the intention and the focus of SEALS is to move to a different level of engagement for our students. And the SEALS allows for more time to engage our students by changing our standards, right? We've said this a lot on the podcast. Instead of going a mile wide with the standards and an inch deep, we're going to then go an inch wide and go a mile deep so that we can really drill down and have time to really imprint this learning on our students so it can be meaningful learning instead of learning for retention, and that it can actually go somewhere and have something important. So on behalf of the entire Change Ed team, thank you for being here with us today. We really enjoyed our time with Northwest Tri-County Intermediate Unit number 5. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate all of our devoted listeners, and we want to encourage you to go find your seiche.
And get sketchy with it.